The call comes at 3 a.m. Azan Mirza is sitting on the edge of a narrow bed in a rented room, the air thick with the smell of cooling concrete. His phone glows against the dark like a wound that refuses to close. His thumb moves over a thin, white hook scar. It's a crescent left by a fishing line that snapped when he was 8, a mark of a day his father laughed until he cried, a physical tie to a version of himself that stayed behind. Across his lap lies a faded blue cotton scarf. His grandmother knotted it around his neck the day he left Bengaluru. Now the threads are as thin as spider silk, and the signal to reach her is just as fragile. He lifts the fabric to his face. It carries the ghost of her kitchen, the scent of cardamom, dust, and the faint grease from years of her hands pressing roti. Azan lives in the contradiction of the migrant. He is the success story, the man who spoke of roots like anchors yet conquered the distance, sending money home every month to prove he made it. But that pride is shadowed by a quiet shame. He wakes up every dawn in a place where no one knows the shape of his name when said right, realizing how easily the distance has severed him. When the digital connection is this thin, physical objects become the only reliable bridge. They are the only things that don't crackle or fade when the lines go dead. He dials. Static crackles like dry leaves. An automated voice speaks in the connection's bones, a foreign greeting that reminds him exactly where he is and how far the signal has to travel. He paces the small floor, bare feet sticking to the tiles. In this room, there is only the metallic tang of fear and yesterday's cold chai. But in his mind, he sees her gnarled, quick hands folding the scarf one last time. The phone buzzes. Then her voice comes through, thin and cracked like parched earth. Beta? The word is a direct hit, a sudden bridge across the dark. He tells her about the scar again, a story they both know by heart. As she laughs, that familiar, dry rustle, the miles between the rented room and the old house seem to collapse. For a second, he isn't in a foreign city. He's back on a narrow street where the call to prayer mixes with bicycle bells, and the heat rises off the road in waves that make the world shimmer. This connection is a brief suspension of reality. As long as the line holds, they can both pretend the separation is only a temporary glitch in an otherwise shared life. But the language he uses to describe that life is changing. Isolation causes a native identity to splinter. As the original sounds slip away, the internal monologue begins to fragment. To fill the gaps, the mind patches the void with survival phrases. Russian from a coworker, Spanish from a book, Japanese and German picked up in the rush of a globalized city. He wants to tell her about the job that hollows him out, or the fear that one day the line will ring empty. But the words he has left feel too small. They're borrowed tools that can't quite grasp the weight of his reality. On the other end, her world is still anchored by the old sounds. She murmurs Alhamdulillah, a steady expression of gratitude that makes his own mismatched vocabulary feel even more frantic. The conversation reaches its limit. Her voice falters as she says the only thing she truly wants. Come soon. Azan says nothing. He cannot promise a return to a version of home that he has already begun to lose. The silence on the line becomes a physical barrier. In the end, he reaches for the only words that fit. He turns to Persian and Urdu, scripts that are engraved into his history. These are the only sounds capable of carrying the ache of a heart that has grown narrow with distance. Linguistic survival in a new world changes the shape of a person's identity. It creates a distance that no amount of money or successful reaching can fully close. The call ends with a click, sharper than any hook. Azan sits in the sudden silence, holding the scarf as it catches the first gray light of dawn. He folds the blue fabric carefully and places it under his pillow. Something has shifted. He can no longer pretend that the act of reaching out is the same thing as being there. The realization is cold and clear. The phone calls and the money are just ways of maintaining a connection that is fundamentally fraying. Even the scarf feels different. The scent of cardamom is still there, but it feels more like a ghost of a memory than a part of his present. Outside, the city begins to wake. Bright morning sunlight sweeps across the room, chasing away the shadows and bringing the modern world into focus. We don't lose our homes to the miles on a map. We lose them in the quiet hours, when we tell ourselves that tomorrow is always soon enough to return.